Hi friends, it's your friendly neighborhood game master Zach Hall here. Feels like we need a recap of the past 12 hours or so in Pathfinder 2nd Edition land. Paizo has announced what they are calling the Remaster project. You can find this link or this blog post link in the doobie-doo. It is on the Paizo blog. They're essentially announcing this Remaster project where the number one goal that they are trying to accomplish here is moving the Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rule set and all of their material moving forward starting in November 2023 off of the existing open gaming license that came under threat by Wizards of the Coast and their corporate overlords Hasbro earlier this year. As soon as that whole debacle began, Paizo came out staunch opposition to it, and once it became clear that even though Wizards of the Coast was going to back down, that this has just gone on to prove to basically every other publisher that uses the OGL and for whatever they're trying to use, that it was time for a new license. Paizo, in working with like hundreds of other independent gaming publishers, is working on and is soon to release the Orc license, which is going to probably feel similar to the open gaming license, except that it's going to allow companies a lot more certainty that they can publish with confidence, knowing that there isn't a corporation looking out for their bottom line, for their capitalistic interests, that could potentially change that license and screw them over in the future. I saw a Reddit user in the past week basically describe the Orc license as a promise not to waste any other gaming company's time with frivolous lawsuits over stuff that probably wouldn't be held up in court anyway. Regardless, that's the context. This remaster project is moving Pathfinder 2nd Edition off the OGL and to the Orc license. But that requires some tweaks to the rules, because some rules are only allowed to be printed because they were using the OGL license. There's a couple of big ones that you should probably know about, like the name for alignment. Alignment is technically not part of the system resource document, which anybody could use. It's not considered part of a rule set that can't be trademarked. It is only allowed by using the open gaming license that Wizards of the Coast controls. So alignment has to go away in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. A couple other little things are going to be tweaked. Spell slots are going to be called spell ranks. And we'll actually go over kind of like all the changes that we are aware of as of today, April 27th, 2023. We are almost basically 6 months out from the publishing of this project. But with all that context, the existing core rulebook, advanced player's guide, game master's guide, and Bestiary 1, those 4 books are all going away at the end of their current printing. Once they sell out, they're no longer going to be sold. Beginning in November, there will be 2 new books, the Player Core and the GM Core, 2 separate rule books. They release in November. March, the Pathfinder Monster Core and the Player Core 2 book will be coming out. Basically like for like. You know, the Game Master's Guide will be in the GM Core. Player's Core is stuff that players need from the core rulebook. Monster Core is Bestiary 1, and Player Core 2 is probably going to contain a lot of stuff that was in the Advanced Player's Guide, including errata and some updates to some classes who, over the past 4 years, have consistently been underperforming, or fans were not were asking for changes. Now, these are still going to be small changes. Let's scroll all the way down to FAQ. Is this a new edition of Pathfinder? No, this does not change the fundamental core system design of Pathfinder. Small improvements and cosmetic changes. But outside of a few minor changes in terminology, the changes are not anywhere substantive enough to be considered a new edition. We like Pathfinder 2nd Edition. You like Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is a remastered version of the original, not a new version altogether. I've seen some people with online discourse start calling this Pathfinder 2.5. I would push back against that a lot. Now, of course, I'm giving myself room to change my mind come November and we actually get to see all of the changes. But from everything Paizo's telling us, this is not a 2.5 in the same way that 3.5 came out decades ago compared to the original 3rd edition. Are my existing Pathfinder 2nd edition books now obsolete? No. With the exception of a few minor variations in terminology and a slightly different mix of monsters, spells, and magic items, the rules remain largely unchanged. A pre-remaster stat block, monster, spell, or adventure should work with the remastered rules without any problems. One thing I will note that's kind of left off of this list is feats. And I think that's largely because they are giving themselves room to include errata and make some changes to some classes, where like some feats that are currently published for a class might be going away and replaced with new, different, better ones. What does this mean for digital content? We're working with digital partners to integrate new system updates in the most seamless way possible. The new rules will be uploaded to Archives of Nethys as usual, and legacy content that does not appear in the remastered books will not disappear from online rules. We will not be updating PDFs of legacy products with the updated rules. Now, what does this mean? It means that if you feel a deep, uncontrollable need to have a physical copy of the most updated rules for Pathfinder 2nd edition, you will need to buy either the physical book from Paizo or a PDF of it through a subscription or what have you, in order to have like the full-fledged PDF version of the new rule set. But if you don't have that deep, uncontrollable, deep-seated need to have the full PDF, all of the rules from the refreshed versions will be available on Archives of Nethys as usual. They will also be available on Foundry with the community-developed Pathfinder 2nd edition system for the many of us that use Foundry as our virtual tabletop. Legacy content that doesn't appear in the remastered books is not disappearing, which means now the onus is on Archives of Nethys and the community development team at Pathfinder for the Pathfinder 2nd edition rule set, for Foundry, etc. These community-driven sites are going to have to come up with ways to let people know and discern between a original version of something and an updated, refreshed version of it. The community, or maybe in Paizo, will create some terminology for new and updated versions. Is this, if we're talking about talismans, are we going to be referring to them as like, CRB talismans versus refreshed talismans? Like we get to kind of come up with that in the next 6 months. But if you don't want to invest the money in getting the refreshed material from Paizo, either in a physical book or PDF format, you can just look up the new rules of Archives of Nethys. If you don't like the new rules, like for instance, we know alignment's going away. But if you like alignment, the rules for alignment in Pathfinder 2e aren't going away. You will still be able to see them on Archives of Nethys. They are still in your current books that you have. Just keep using them. Don't like it, don't use it. I think this speaks to more of a potentially community-wide problem where people feel the need to be playing the exact same game as everybody else. And unless you are playing Pathfinder Society, which is like the organized play version of Pathfinder, you don't. I can tell you right now, I play a different version of Pathfinder 2nd edition at my home game than you play for your home game. And that's because that's how tabletop role-playing games work. Whether you know it or not, you're playing something that's specific to you. So just play whatever you like. If you don't like the refreshed versions of something, then don't play it. If you're the GM and you don't like the changes to any of the classes that will be included in the refresh material, just say your players aren't going to play it. Like, you're not going and playing like in a tournament where you're going to be at a disadvantage compared to another player that's using a refreshed version. Just don't allow the refreshed versions at your table and everybody's fine. All that material will still be there. Will the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remaster books be a part of my ongoing Pathfinder rulebook subscriptions? They will be included, and we're currently working on a method whereby existing subscribers will have the opportunity to opt out if they wish to. Only really comes into play if you use the rulebook subscription in order to get the books delivered to you as quickly as possible and have a free PDF bundled to you that gets emailed and delivered to you as soon as your book ships, which sometimes means you get the PDF before a street date, or the day of street date, as opposed to waiting on your book to get shipped to you. So totally, if you know you're going to be playing Pathfinder for a long time, I highly suggest getting on the subscription. Just it ends up saving you some money and gives you that access to the PDF pretty quickly. But if you don't want the books and you're a current subscriber, they will give you the opportunity to opt out. So you don't get to be mad about that. Will there be more remaster books to come, like a Monster Core 2, Player Core 3? Right now, we're just focusing on the 4 that is part of this announcement. We look forward to upcoming releases like Rage of the Elements, the Lost Omen Shanxia World Guide and Character Guide, Adventure Paths, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff that we already knew about that was coming out in 2023, that stuff is still coming out. Will the new remaster books have special editions? Yes. Super cool for those of us who want to continue supporting Paizo financially at every opportunity, and getting some cool special edition, first edition looks at these books might be really, really cool. And will there be pocket editions? Yes. Will these changes impact the Starfinder role-playing game? Not yet. Y'all, come on, listen. Y'all know I'm a big sci-fi fan. I have not taken the dive into trying to really learn Starfinder, though maybe that'd be something fun to do on the channel. I literally am thinking about it for the first time right now. Would that be interesting? Knowing that I'm not really doing a lot of Pathfinder content right now, because it feels weird to do while I'm running the game. Really, my Pathfinder content is more like a GM diary, as opposed to I'm not trying to explain the rules to anybody. There's way better channels at that. But would it be interesting for me to learn Starfinder? Let me know. But I would jump in immediately if Starfinder started using the same Pathfinder 2nd Edition, now refreshed system. I would eat that up. And not yet sounds great. That basically means hey, that says we're not ready to announce Starfinder 2E yet. But yeah, it's not yet. Eventually we are going to be moving Starfinder to the Pathfinder 2E system. That's super exciting to me. Kind of buried and obviously not something that impacts Pathfinder 2E players if you're not playing Starfinder, but is exciting to me. Now, later that day, the developers from Paizo held a live stream on Twitch to help kind of answer some more questions, try to provide some more transparency. It's happening on their Twitch. I'm pretty sure the VOD is up. I will link in the doobie-doo directly to that VOD. So if you want to get the full context, you can go watch the video. But a lovely Reddit user, I believe Mr. Happy Tinkles, over on the Pathfinder 2E subreddit, created a full Google Doc with all of the changes that they for the remaster during that Twitch announcement that they kind of created some clarity around. So some OGL based changes. These are stuff they had to do in order to get the books onto the Orc license. Spell level is now being changed to spell rank. That's awesome. I think spell level compared to character level is, from my personal experience, is confusing to new players when the term level is used in multiple different places and means vastly different things. So as a GM who mainly plays with brand new people, that I've experienced this confusion in D&D and Pathfinder 2E. This is not a big deal. This is not worth buying a new book over. Ability scores are going away. They're just going to become their ability modifiers now. From context and the VOD, they basically wanted to do this with the original release of Pathfinder 2E, but Some of this stuff kind of got held on for legacy reasons. They didn't want to alienate any D&D 3.5 or Pathfinder 1 players. They wanted it to feel as similar to D&D and Pathfinder 1e as possible, knowing that a lot of the rest of the system was changed. They felt like it was an easy thing to keep without really losing much. But ability scores are never used outside of character creation. They're just on your sheet, and you kind of have to, you make the translation. So now we're just doing away with the start at 10, add 2 to your score to turn your ability modifier into X, blah, blah, blah. We're getting rid of that. It's just going to be +1, +2 to your strength, which is great. Alignments are now going to be edicts and anathema. Aligned damage now becomes holy, unholy. This doesn't bother me at all, but this does represent a fairly large change for our religious-based characters and PCs and NPCs. And so this is one of those things where we have to wait and see to see if you like, if I like, if the community as a whole likes. I'm not bothered by this. I feel like alignment, it was something I never dealt with in D&D 5e. I actually had to kind of learn how to manage it and how I wanted to use it in my Pathfinder 2nd edition game once a player joined the group and is going to be playing a champion. And so, having these really strict class options being restricted by alignment, extremely weird, and I don't particularly enjoy that kind of limitation, but I get the flop side. That's a argument for another time, whether or not alignment is a good RP tool or restricts or role playing. I don't care. For me, this also isn't a big deal, and maybe not worth buying a new book over. But if, your table uses alignment a lot and wants to look at the new rules, maybe check them out online before you go and spend whatever the new book is going to cost before you buy the new book. OGL spells are being renamed and replaced. I've seen this before with other like 5th edition type material where something that is not licensed has to get renamed to something that can be licensed, even though they mechanically do the same thing, because the mechanics can't be trademarked, just the name can be. So Magic Missile is part of the OGL, and so it will no longer be Magic Missile anymore. It'll probably be Force Missile or something like that. Things that we will all still probably call Magic Missile because of muscle memory. And, that's what our head thinks, but not a big deal. All these spells will be available in Archives of Nethys. You can use the new ones. You can use the old ones. Paizo isn't sending the Pinkertons to your door because you were mixing and matching original and refreshed material. Just do what you want. Do whatever makes you happy. And then Nephilim are replacing the Tiefling and Aasimar and other planar descendants. Tiefling and Aasimar are not just like, these are D&D constructions that they have to avoid using in order to not get sued, which is a bummer. Like the Tiefling and Aasimar are an extremely popular part of the D&D world, which Pathfinder up until this refresh printing has been a part of, loosely through the OGL that are now going away. I'm sure there will be homebrews if you still want tieflings. And again, nobody's sending non-government agents to your door to tell you to stop calling your character a tiefling because the licensing changed. Do whatever you want to do. The new ancestry details will be up on Archives of Nethys if you don't want to buy a new book. These are the three classes that are getting some updates. The Witch, which has needed it. The Champion, which has needed it. And the Oracle, which has needed it. The only, the downsides to this versus these classes just getting errated is that if you own the existing book that these classes were in, you're not going to get an updated PDF with the new rules. That's the only downside. You could still look this up on Archives of Nethys or in the Foundry system. You'll have to, if you want a PDF, you'll have to buy the book from Paizo or buy, that's the only downside. It's the only bummer. Otherwise, we're getting updates to a class. This is good news. These are classes that the community has told Paizo we would like to see these get improved to either reduce ambiguity or bring their mechanics and stats up to a higher baseline compared to the other classes. They've listened, and they're taking this opportunity of, we know we're going to do a completely new, like a reprinting of our books. Let's go ahead and make some changes that the community has told us that they want and we agree with. Focus points is also getting an update. I'm extremely interested in seeing what this is because I don't find focus points to be complicated. Like, yes, it is an extra system that you kind of have to come to grips with, but it feels simple to me. I wouldn't have pegged this as something that needs revising, but apparently I'm in the minority there, or maybe just misinformed. So they are going to be revisiting the focus points and focus spell system. It's possible that it's just a rename or maybe some less ambiguous language being added in or replacing old language to make sure everybody knows what's going on. Pretty straightforward. Two things that everybody's excited about. Rogues are going to be proficient in martial weapons, and wizards are just going to get simple weapon proficiency instead of both of these classes getting only really specific weapon proficiency. So like instead of getting access to all martial weapons, rogues were proficient in a specific weapon or two. The developers basically said, we did this because of like D&D legacy reasons. I think it's crazy that people would have legitimately gotten mad at Paizo if they gave wizards access to all simple weapons instead of just staves and clubs and daggers, just because somebody who wrote D&D second edition decided that that's what the wizards were going to be proficient in. How silly. But that is what happened. But now that they're basically doing away with all of that legacy D&D stuff, we get just better things, which is great. So all that stuff is like, this is basically the OGL changes. Now here's how they've at least told us in the Twitch stream the books are going to be formatted. So the player core book coming out in November, character creation rules and conditions, etc. A bulk of ancestries. They didn't exactly list which ones were going to be here, but it will be plenty. And again, all of the rules, including all of the ancestries available, will be freely available on Archives of Nethys, will surely be available on free community tools like Path Builder, and will absolutely be a part of the Pathfinder 2e system on Foundry, which is basically all the ways that most of the Pathfinder community plays anyway. And again, if you play in person with just books and no digital content, and you don't like the changes, don't buy the books. Just keep playing the game you're currently playing. Nobody will know. So these are the 8 classes that will be in the player core rulebook: Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, Wizard. So I think this is slightly different than the existing core rulebook. I would have to pull it out. I think they basically swapped out the champion for the witch. This could mean, I think that means the champion's coming in player core 2, which won't publish for like 3 months after this one. Possible that they just need the extra development time, or needed the extra development time for changes made to the champion because of alignment and also like a general, making the champion a little bit better. So it could be why they made that switch. It could be they think the witch is easier to onboard to for new players. And if player core 2 is going to be kind of a replacement for the advanced players, maybe they view the champion as like, if you want to play a religious melee, you can just be a fighter. And listen, like, take the champion dedication from whatever, or just play the old champion. You're fine. So the core rulebook is becoming player core 1. You'll notice that this doesn't list out things like all of the Lost Omens setting material. It's missing a lot of this content that GMs used to run the game. So it's basically like one kind of, not a bummer, but a change they are making, which can be viewed as like negative to, I think, rightfully or understandably, is that I feel like you could just run Pathfinder 2nd edition using just the core rulebook, the existing core rulebook. It has everything that both a player and a GM needs. That has been a complaint before, that it feels it's an extremely big, heavy, and fairly expensive book for a player to buy, especially if they're not going to use 40% of it, which is all setting or GM related stuff. So I think the idea here that Paizo is getting at is we're going to create a very player specific book that is just going to be mainly the stuff they need to create a character and play that character and understand how the game is played. And then we're going to put setting stuff and GM stuff in the GM specific book, which is the GM core book that will come out at the same time as player core. So we then see some witch revisions, the Nephilim, which we already kind of talked about. Again, a new ancestry is not enough to buy a new book. Just look it up on Archives of Nethys. Alignment is a big deal. Like it's way more ingrained in the system than it is in 5e, which was something I had to get used to. We will have to kind of wait and see what the system will look like and feel like. And really, we're not going to really know how it feels until we get a look at the cleric, which is obviously like has alignment stuff. The champion 2 will have to wait till player core 2 when that comes out. Not until July. Wow, a whole like 6-7 months later. That's a bummer, but I get it. So now magic items are moving from the player books to GM core. So there will be some new magic items and some category changes for items. Crafting changes. I don't know if this means that it's just replacing crafting rules that were in the core rulebook with the ones that were in Treasure Vault that came out semi-recently, or if this is going to be further errata to crafting rules. I'm not clear. They might have said it, but I'm basing off what I've read so far. So advice for GMs is moving into GM core. Building adventures and campaigns, which was in the core rulebook, is moving into GM core. Subsystems, free archetype rules is going in GM core. Variant rules are going there too, which all of this makes sense. This is all stuff that the GM needs that the player doesn't necessarily need. So the Age of Lost Omens chapter from the core rulebook is moving into GM core, which I already mentioned. And then apparently there is going to be some system changes to talismans. They said they're going to expand on this on a panel at PaizoCon. I feel like talismans is easily one of those things that people don't use because it stinks or doesn't feel as useful as all the costs and usage associated with whatever the effect would be. So cool opportunity to just rework something that has been underwhelming. It is not a big part of the system. If none of this other stuff has been enough for you to buy a new book, talismans getting a change shouldn't be either. Look it up on Archives of Nethys. So we then have Monster Core, which is a lot of OGL monster. The OGL monsters have to be removed. They'll probably get replaced with license-friendly, similar versions, similar to how I believe like Pathfinder doesn't have access to like mind flayers because those are very specific to D&D, but they did create like the Brain Devourer and other similar types that can fill that niche. And then obviously nobody's knocking down your door to check what kind of licensed content you are using in your games. If you want to use a stat block and reskin it as a mind flayer or homebrew your own, go for it. They're adding in Genie, which is awesome. And then they were really excited about dragons being added, and they're changing up dragons at all, like completely overall. Like I don't think they're going to be like chromatic color based. They're going to be based on what kind of magical tradition they're using instead, which is super exciting. And like I think it's time we see a fresh version of this. That's my biggest thing. I am legitimately excited that Paizo is finally getting to publish a game that has zero legal connections to Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast, and we can legitimately see some completely fresh ideas for things that we are already used to, while knowing that there are backups that we can use if we don't like what Paizo does. Like completely great. So we've got Player Core 2 coming out in July. The archetypes from the APG will be in this. Ancestries, like here, are getting put into Player Core 2. The Null has to be renamed into the Colo. Fine. Again, no eyes knocking on your door if you call your character a Null because you prefer that over a Colo. Do whatever you want. Versatile Heritages, Dampierre, Duskwalker are here, including a new unannounced Heritage, which is fun. Alchemist is getting a full rework. And then the champion is being changed because of the alignment removal. There will be some thematic restrictions for champions. Alchemist has been underwhelming since it came out, like since the core rulebook. It's a complicated class that has only become more complicated with the crafting rules kind of getting errated and consistently changed. It's probably been the most heavily errated class, with Paizo trying to get it in a spot where fans like it, and it needs a full rework. Now, this isn't coming until Player Core 2. All of its rule set will be available digitally, like all the other rules, but this is worth buying a book for, in my opinion. Like, literally nothing else has been so huge that I've felt the need to like super invest in one of the new refresh books. A class getting a total rework, it's worth it. It's worth buying the book for, and it's worth being charged for. Like, that's fine. I'm not mad about it. Full disclosure, I will probably get all of these books anyway, because I have the means. It's fine. Like, not a big deal. I will like them. All right. How are gods changing? Gods that care heavily about alignment will remain strict about it. Sounds like a case-by-case thing. Are there troop rules in Monster Core? No, but there's going to be new troops and Rage of Elements, though. There'll be a revised intro product at some point, but you could totally run the beginner's box without having any of the additional rule books, without any major changes. It'll be fine. Conversion guide? Question mark? Probably a term primer and resources for translating. Example, a feat for alignment damage would get a nuanced change contained within, whether or not it's a feasible quick change. Remaster won't affect partnered content. Content creators will be worked with to get the changes through. Favorite change. So Logan says focus points are going to be easier to use and refocusing will be easier. The Bard and Druid from my party and my new champion that's joining the party will be extremely excited. Dragons. Woohoo! Which I also agree, that's super exciting. What should game masters think about their design? Look for things you want to use, otherwise content is unchanged as played. Basically things I've been yelling at and really beating down in this video. Exceptions or anything alignment themed should keep an eye out for systems affected by alignment changes. Let's see. Alignments will have absolutely no bearing on the established lore and story of outsiders such as devils and angels. They'll go into other aspects in the form of edicts and anathemas. Again, we'll kind of have to wait and see what those are going to look like. Is this 2.5? No, it's errata plus. New starting magic items, Ring of Protections, will be in the errata. Alchemical items will be going into Player Core 2 to package them with the Alchemist. PDFs won't be updated quite yet. The rules and changes published will be available online for free. Is Magic Missile gone? Not sure. They changed Magic Missile's mechanics. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. It's fine. If you like using Magic Missile, what am I going to say? Keep using Magic Missile. This is all, I will include the link to this. Feel free to come and check it out. But listen, this is all I wanted to say. People are making this out to be a really huge deal, and it is a big deal. It's an exciting big deal. I think some people have maybe some PTSD from the Wizards of the Coast changes from earlier this year. Their 1D&D announcement and the, in my view, really bad play testing that they're doing. And they're being very... D&D and Wizards of the Coast is being very kind of beat around the bush about this being a new edition. And they're really not talking about editions at all. And I think it's getting people frustrated because they're going to have to buy D&D. Wizards of the Coast is talking about backwards capability, but they're introducing, completely new versions of almost everything. This is not that. And I want to be extremely, extremely clear. This is not that. If you want to continue playing with your existing core rulebook, APG, GMG, please do so. You will likely, you won't feel any change because nothing will change. If you're interested in the rules but don't want to spend the couple $100 it's going to take to buy 4 new books, then look up the rules on Archives of Nethys, which is completely free and available to everybody, which is something that isn't available in other similar 2D20 based games. So at the end of the day, this is exciting. We should be excited for Paizo finally coming underneath the boot and the leash of the Wizards of the Coast owned OGL. We're finally getting a completely independent game from D&D for those of us who have want to be completely separate from that. And we know that the Orc license is going to be an unowned license that Paizo, if they got bought out or the leadership changed and wanted to restructure, they're not going to be able to. The rules we will have will be the rules that we have for as long as we want to use them and have them. So rest easy. Everything is going to be just fine. If you don't want this, don't take it, don't buy it, don't use it. GM fiat, GM limitations of access to things has always been a thing, especially in Pathfinder, to just continue to use it. Your home game doesn't have to be affected by this change at all. Mine will probably be not affected at all, except we play on Foundry. So if Foundry changes like the names to stuff, like it'll probably say the new thing, but that's it. So I hope this answers the questions that could be answered. Of course, we have questions still outstanding, but that's because we haven't seen the details of like what exactly the replacement for alignment is. We'll see them at some point in the next 6 months, and I'm sure we will talk about them then. Rest easy. Everything is A-OK. I hope you have a great day. Be healthy. That's not a word. Enjoy rolling dice with your friends. Enjoy talking about it with strangers on the internet. Catch you next time. Peace.